I love the man who can smile in trouble, who can gather strength from distress and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, and he whose heart is firm and conscience approves his conduct shall pursue his principles until death. Thomas Paine. Business owners, today we have a special guest in the room here. This video, by the way, my name's Daryl Guberman. I'm the CEO of Guberman-PMC, LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. We assist companies in manufacturing quality and also special processes and ISO certification and all derivatives. We did some focus work on ISO 17025 several years ago in 2018-19, especially we did it even more progressively when we heard about the whole COVID issue and the Wuhan laboratory. And when we looked at Pamela Sale then, you'll see what she says. And it's absolutely deplorable. And this is where it all comes from, where ANSI's mission statement comes from. Half a nut, fuck you, from Russ Chaney, who was the chairman in 2019. You will see it. We have a special guest here. His name is Peter O'Neill from ASIS International. This video is about ANSI mission statement, half a nut, fuck you, by Russ Chaney, chairman, silenced by corporate member Peter O'Neill, CEO at ASIS International. I know, Peter, you're probably in shock, but sit back, relax, get your popcorn. You'll probably need a shot of Slivovitz after. Let me tell you. Sue Karate sits on ANSI's members of management, basically. They're ANSI board members. And she's one of your employees. And I would really, as the CEO, watch what your employees do, especially the affiliations. In 2022, June, there was an open enrollment for a director at large for ANSI. And what I did, come on back here, Peter. What I did is I put in my 54-page, I'm sure they never received anything like this, 54-page booklet, because I was not and am not a member of ANSI, but I sure as hell became a nominee. What happened is I had sent out 30 letters to my customers to ask them for recommendations. We got more than half back, 16. What happened also is there was 9 questions that I had to answer. Is what are the initiatives that I could bring to the table for ANSI to further their global progress, and also not only global but also America progress within the standardization and voluntary standards, voluntary consensus standards. But we find out that they're not working that well at all, and I will tell you more about that as this progresses. But what was disturbing was in 2019, Russ Chaney, then the chairman of ANSI, called me on the phone and said, half a nut, fuck you, because I opened up an impropriety when it came to laboratory certification, and rightfully so. You will see that too as this video progresses. He said at the end of my questionnaire, he said, the committee appreciates your interest in serving in an ANSI leadership position and your willingness to provide us this additional information. Sincerely, Russ Chaney, chair of the ANSI 2022 Nominating Committee. And you know darn well, as a leader, to be a good leader, when I put my application in, they should have at least interviewed me, got me into the office. Instead, they blew me off with an email, which is impersonal. I asked them in 2019 via an email to Joe Bathia, the CEO, I asked him for an apology. Joe Bathia, rather than having the balls in the air, he didn't have any. He sent my letter off to his lawyer, Jameson Carroll. You'll see that as well. And Jameson Carroll said, I heard nothing disturbing about the audio file. He did say, Russ Chaney did say, half a nut, fuck you. You'll find it down below this video in the description. So do you think human nature says he should have done the management thing and got me into the office and at least interviewed me and then blew me off? Instead, he had those balls in the air and they refused us. Isn't that a tender moment? And I wanted to get in there to change their mission statement, but from half a nut, fuck you, to something that is back to normal about quality. But ANSI is an accreditation body and also a standards writer. In fact, ANSI credits SurfSafe, for a food safety training, and it's rated C- with a Better Business Bureau. It used to be F. Until I kept on hammering at it. It got to A in 2021, and then I think in 2022 it went back to C-, and as things progress, probably by 2023 it'll be back to an F again because of service problems. ANSI also certifies like Cargill Beef, who had a 138,000 pound recall of E. coli laden beef, chopped beef, back in 2018. I think it was September. On their certificate for the British Retail Consortium, Peter, is the ANSI logo. You have a lot of issues. And you look at Mitzi Baum, who sits on your Stop Foodborne Illness, and looks like ANSI isn't doing a good job. And Cargill, as a matter of fact, sits on ANSI's board, right over by the USDA, right over by the FDA. Isn't that a tender moment in a turbulent world? We're going to go into this. You know, I will say this, in 2013, a Region 3 director for the ASQ, the American Society for Quality, Dave Levy, came to one of the speeches I gave at the ASQ, and he said, ANSI-ANAB have, they have, ANSI-ASQ have no problem with what you're doing, basically. ASQ owned, the American Society for Quality owned ANAB 50%, so that was a big deal. It didn't mean anything to me. It was a big deal. But then you have Randy Doherty, who approved us also, said that, we're not part of the IAF and ILAC system, but they do recognize us, that there are other bodies like my body and registration, accreditation body that are within the system. But I don't want to join them because you're going to find out that when Randy asked us in 2016, he had already in 2015 handed over the IF, the International Accreditation Forum, incorporated in Delaware, to a communist Chinese national. Let's put you down and show you this mess. ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation harboring both federal agencies and corporations. You probably don't know any of this, but now I'm going to educate you, my friend, Peter. Randy Doherty, at the time, was the vice president of ANAB. This is 2015. He was the chairman of the IF, and he was also the principal on the 990 tax form for the IF incorporated in Delaware. Zhao Jinwu, communist national, who's mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, per the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7, which mandates espionage. He was around our quality since 1994. He took over the IAF incorporated in Delaware in 2015 and 2021, and he is also, at the time, was the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services in Beijing, China, that certified the suspect laboratory in Wuhan, China. You have ANSI, who took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. You have both federal agencies and corporations that are sitting on board. The problem, which is very bad for us in America, is that ANSI, ANAB say we're an American company. Well, here are 10 registrars in communist China that could issue an ANAB accredited certificate. Isn't that quaint and special? Unbelievable mess here. Anybody who is ANAB accredited in the United States, what are you thinking about? Cybersecurity issues. But you'll say, I got my balls in the air. You have no balls whatsoever, to tell you the truth. But anyway, let's continue on. And that might be brash. Big deal. So let's continue on. All right. I was doing my research, Peter, when I discovered this whole laboratory issue, laboratory accreditation mess. It was an absolute degradation of quality at its worst, because this is the title of one of the articles I read. A majority of forensic failures are in certified laboratories. I pulled some information, and we found out that, wow, this quality failure stuff is absolutely atrocious. There's a ton of information on it. We pulled another article with Pamela Sale, who at the time was the vice president of laboratory accreditation for ANSI-ANAB. She said under deposition, almost, it's very funny, like Anthony Fauci, when he was asked about COVID, about gain of function research, under sworn statement, he said, "I don't know anything about it." And I show, and you'll find another, videos down below, Peter. You'll find out that I have an article that shows the second workshop in Wuhan, China, illustrates the first item of business is gain of function research. So Fauci lied under oath. Isn't that tender? And she basically tells you that the certificate they dispense is basically not good. And here it is. One of the issues is that there is no commonly agreed upon set of standards that forensic labs around the country have to follow. Instead, there are informal guidelines that labs can choose to follow or not. So what I did is I did a video, Peter, on A2LA. A2LA is an accreditation body for laboratory, sitting on ANSI's board, right over by sheriff's forensic departments and by the Department of Forensic Science, the FBI runs, which had to pull the certificate several years ago because of glaring discrepancies within the data that they were collecting. Also, A2LA was sitting on the IAF, getting watched over and controlled by Communist China between 2015 and 2021. We had a Miss Ashley Morton from A2LA at the time in 2019 state underneath the video. She said, A2LA does not sit on ANSI. They are both American accreditation bodies in equal standing, which she said, no, they're not. Yes, they are. So in 2019, we pulled this form that shows you the roster, the ANSI Board of Directors 2019 roster, shows Russ Chaney as the chairman. When I put in my documentation for election to the director at large, I looked at what a representative of ANSI must do, basically the policies as to what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to, not put into a bad light ANSI in any way, shape, or form. Well, Russ Chaney called me and said, "Half a nut, fuck you." You will find the audio files down below in other videos, but this is a fact, and this is basically why I say underneath ANSI says "half a nut, fuck you," because every corporation that I've worked in, you had to represent them in a good light. You could not say "half a nut, fuck you," but I guess ANSI approves it, and I'll show you how. You see the board, you see the corporations, federal agencies, it looks like they all approve. Half a nut, fuck you. What is that saying about your organization, ASIS International? The worst thing is this, Peter, okay, is that I sent a letter to Joe Bathia in 2019 asking for an apology. How hard was that to give me, Peter? Well, he pushed it up to the lawyer, Jameson Carroll. And you know what Jameson Carroll of Carroll and Weiss said in Atlanta, Georgia? He said that after analysis, we were unable to identify any harassing or objectionable content in the brief audio file provided. And basically, Joe Bathia, as the CEO, did not make any demonstrative decision-making, but collect his $2 million salary. His eyes are always bloodshot when you see him being interviewed. Well, maybe he's got health problems. I think the real health problem is that his organization dispenses a half a nut fuck you certificates. As that's from Russ Chaney, that's not me. Finally, Peter, I'm going to say this. I went to New York where ANSI resides. There was no signage that says ANSI outside. $84 million boondoggle organization, which I'm exposing here, and you're part of that with your employee sitting on ANSI's board. So what does that say about your possible organization? Possibly this. Birds of a feather flock together. Remember that statement, Peter. Birds of a feather flock together. So what I did is I also went down to Washington, D.C., where I picketed them on L Street, 1899 L Street, okay, Northwest Washington. There was no identifying signs out there that said ANSI. So I basically walked with this sign stating that they should have this sign outside New York and also outside Washington. In fact, in a little while, I may be going back down to Washington. I may also be going to New York, but they still don't let you in the building because of COVID, okay, because of the scare of COVID, which remember this, ANSI and ANAB were being watched between 2015 and 21. over by Communist China, Zhao Jinwu, who stood in the laboratory as the chairman of IAF and also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, handing over a laboratory certificate that Pamela Sales stated, okay, from one laboratory to another, there is variances. So ANSI's quality, ANAB's quality, and those organizations that sit there, federal agencies and corporations, must condone the factor that ANSI's mission statement is half a nut, fuck you, via Russ Chaney, because Russ Chaney is the representative, is the shining light, oy vey, of ANSI in 2019, and you have to laugh, because this should be the sign in New York and also Washington. We may mail this to them, as a matter of fact, as a label for their outside of their business, because it's not a business. From what Russ Chaney says, it's half a nut. Fuck you. 203-556 Peter, 203-556-1493, or Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. And I thank you.